So this is the beginning of video number 5. This is the last video in the septic tank series. I'm going to cover the cost of most of the major components and just a general overview with a few thoughts on how the septic install went. I hope you enjoy.
But we got the gravel backfilled. We probably have 16 inches of gravel in here.
So the last video, I kind of screwed this last clip up, so stick with me through this clip to do a little recap of video number 4, and we will get on to the cost and overview in about a minute.
Have holes at the end of each of the lateral runs, and we have to get each hole, which I'll spin you around so it'll make sense. So you can see the ends down there, and you see the water coming out of them. So there's 4 of them, and there's one over here too. So we are adjusting each valve inside of the manifold box, which is down here to my right now, to adjust how much water goes down each of the runs. So I'm gonna go down here with the tape measure, make sure we're all above 24 and that they're all pretty even all the way across, which means equal amounts of water are going to each individual lateral. Looks pretty good right now. I'm actually gonna go down there and start taking a measurement and see where we're at. So each one of those, you saw how I measured them, is controlled via this box in the ground. These 2 boxes have the valve manifolds in them. So we built the valve manifold here. So that one goes here, and the next valve is down and over, and you can kind of get the idea for the rest of them. So you can see how the valves are all sort of adjusted slightly, not open all the way, but not closed all the way. And that makes it so that the water coming out of the end is even, or as even as we're gonna get it. We're gonna straighten up that last one right there. And that's pretty much it. We put drainage rock in and under these things, so when we backfill the dirt around here, they drain the water away from there. And the carry line goes all the way up to the house, through here, and that's where the tanks are at.
So we're wrapped up with doing the septic install. My brother helped me out with it quite a bit, and SGI rhombus system, simplex system, is what we use to install for the pump control for your high level, low level, and your reserve in between the alarms. Independent cutoff switch. So this is about $1,000 just for this control box. $500 roughly for the rest of the electrical that controls the float units inside the tanks. And then we get to the tank installation, and the tanks run about $1,200 a piece. They were about $2,500 total after taxes. They don't come with the risers and the lids. Risers and lids are separate, and that's basically $250 for the quantity that you see here. And then you have to seal it with an additional concrete type putty. That's another 30 or 40 bucks just for the concrete putty to seal them to the lids. I'm not going to take the lid off. There's separate videos that show the pump system and how we installed that in there. And then all of my PVC piping, so the 4-inch stuff that ties from the house over the sewer lines, the 2-inch piping that runs 250 feet in my case to my drain field, which is abnormally long for most systems, but in my case I wanted to put the drain field a lot further away from my house. So we'll go down and we'll move down to the drain field and we'll discuss the infiltrators and carrier lines and the cost for that. So the lead in to my system before my drain field, I had to install a curtain drain 10 feet up a slight slope of the hill for my actual drain field. We put this curtain drain in, 4-inch pipe, drill drained in the bottom, and then it runs it out in daylights on the far side of the septic system. This keeps the water from coming down into my actual system, there's a piece of barrier plastic that protects it from water flowing that way. We go 6 inches into the hard pan. Okay, so I want to show you inside the valve boxes, and the designer who designed my system actually liked the fact that we use this drain river rock underneath the valve systems. A lot of people skimp on it and don't even bother to put it under there. These are the control valves that equal out the distribution amongst the 5 different lines in my drain field. Those run about 30 bucks for the set of them, and all the piping ran me about a couple $1,000s for all of the piping that I have in my system. The infiltrator lines ran about $1,800 for the infiltrator covers that you see. And the dig out of this, fortunately I had the use of my brother's tractor to actually do this, otherwise you'd be into it for quite a bit more for rental equipment. And the inlines down there for doing your squirt height for open for inspections. For most counties now in Washington, or at least the one I'm in and the one my brother lives in, require inspections for pressure systems. So yearly they're going to come out and pull those caps off there to do inspections on the spray ports. So there's a few other things we want to talk about with the system. Now we're going to start back before the system even existed with the designer. Now we shopped around a little bit, I did, because I had one designer who quoted me $2,400 to do the design that you see here, and a different designer who I paid $800 to do the same exact design, which I submitted to the county, and it was no problem. And for that design it was $800, and then you have a separate fee for county inspectors and county fees for installation, which were $400 for installation fee, and then they come out and they do their inspections on it. Other things about these pipes though too is that the 1.5 inch pipes that we installed, we actually bought the pipe and drilled the holes every 10 feet. There's a 3/16 hole drilled from here to the end of the lateral line. That's required, and they're also required to be facing at 12 o'clock position so it sprays up into the infiltrator itself and then curtains down in the infiltrator line itself. And the design work of my septic system, you'll note that my infiltrators are actually kind of high in the dirt, and that's due to the design, because I have a hard pan located about 26 inches down, which is about the minimum you can get away with for a gravity system. And so in the case of having to put this so high in the ground, they let me do a pressure system here and not a more complex system. Normally you'll see them with better soil buried further down into the dirt, so you won't have to backfill so high over the top of the laterals. We had one of the wettest and snow winters that we've had in a long time, which is the exact time I happened to have to install this system. It was horrible. It was a horrible time to build and dig in this stuff. The mud pit that this was is unbelievable. When we first dug these lateral lines, that wasn't too hard, but then that came into a lot of wet, a lot of snow on top of my system. But we covered it with plastic throughout the wet season. So the other thing we're going to talk about is due to the time frame of when I installed the septic system in this winter that we had with all the rain and snow, is that this entire backyard, which I can stand on now, I couldn't stand on when we did the install. Matter of fact, it was 2 or 3 feet of mud. And normally what will happen is, if you build in the correct time of year, which would be more like the summertime, the septic truck will actually come with both of these tanks loaded onto one truck. They'll boom the tank out and they'll put it actually down into your septic hole. But because I couldn't get the septic truck back here, because each one of those tanks weighs 11,000 pounds, I called the Hagerman's precast, and they told me that the tanks weighed 11,000 pounds a piece, which is next to nearly impossible at 22,000 pounds plus the truck weight to get across this mud field. That truck would have just sunk in and we would never got the truck out. So what had to happen is I had to actually hire an excavator, a guy who had a 200 series excavator, to lift each one of these tanks individually. And Hagerman's lent me the lift bar, which you need the actual lift bar from the precast place because it's a perfect pick point for their rebar pick points that they use to take up those tanks. Now, when we put those tanks in the ground, both me and my brother took 2x4s and we walked them all the way around the house, and that excavator took it over to the hole, and he basically told us that it's one time down and they're not coming back up, because even a 200 series excavator can't lift that 11,000 pounds up. It's just not quite big enough, but it could actually lift them down in the hole, and me and my brother lined it up pretty perfectly, but it was a one-shot kind of deal. That cost me some additional money. Roughly, I'm gonna say it cost about $1,000 because he did a little more work when he was here. So we'll break that apart at about $1,000 that would it cost to actually just have an excavator come in and lift those tanks down into the hole. You really need to try to time your house build to not be the winner because there's so much involved with it. If you look just in my rock driveway, I had to put this rock down just to get the dump trucks back here to load up all the fill that's going to happen over the drain field. You wouldn't have to pay basically $5,000 or $6,000 of heavy-duty construction rock, have an excavator come in and lower your tanks if you build not during winter. The rain and the snow will kill you and you'll eat up a ton of money. One more thing of note is when we had the excavator out here, I hired them for two reasons. One was to put the tanks in the hole. The other reason was my brother's L3200 Kubota with the backhoe got down and got most of the topsoil off, but when you get down to the hard pan, it is incredibly hard on a smaller tractor to dig through hard pan. And at the distance we had to dig down the holes, I don't think his tractor would have been able to do it, but that excavator dug through the hard pan no problem. It dug those holes in roughly 25 minutes and they were done, getting them perfectly flat for us to put these tanks in. Very little guesswork, and he did a really good job, and he did it really fast.
Well, what you're watching right here is a company that my brother hired to come out with that is a Kubota KX80, I believe. It's a pretty good sized excavator, and he came out and did all the backfill of the drain field. Because my little tractor, my L3200, can't quite reach out over the infiltrators and get all that coverage that we could with this guy. He came out and did it, and it costs about $1,000-ish, and it was money well spent. Guy did a great job, and we really appreciate his help.
All right, what you guys are looking at right there, right in the middle of the screen, is the control panel for the septic system. That has all of the wiring for the floats and the pump inside of it. It has manual mode and automatic mode, which is the normal mode it would be in. That is a visual alarm on the top, that little red light, and there's also an audible alarm. And that piece of conduit coming out of the box goes down into the ground. You can see it there. And it follows the pipe that comes out of the house around, goes under the dirt here, and you can see that we've started to cover up the system, but that 4-inch line goes into the first tank, and then that tank is actually a 2-chamber tank, and there's a divider in the middle of it. That's where all the solids from the system go. And then there is another 4-inch pipe that you can't see between the two center lids. There is a 4-inch pipe that goes from the first tank to the second tank. That second tank is where the pump is at. You can see that gray conduit on the ground there. That gray conduit has the wires for the pump and the floats inside of it that goes into the tank. And that is what makes all those floats work. There is a 2-inch carry line that comes out of the last riser, so the riser on the right in the middle of the screen. And that 2-inch line goes from the tanks all the way down 250 feet, all the way down about where the drone is flying. So it's buried in the ground here, and it goes right underneath of this pile of gravel. And it comes out of the dirt right there. You can see the 2-inch carry line going to those two chambers with the green lids. Those are the boxes that house the valves that we use for distribution through the drain field. that pipe then transfers from a 2-inch line through the valves down to this 1.5-inch stuff, which is run through each of the 5 laterals, as you can see here. And those laterals, the first 4 from left to right, are 55 feet long, and the one on the far right is 50 feet long. And the pipes run down inside of there to the far end. And you can see the little cap sticking out of the ends of the pipes. There's a squirt height that we have to do that you saw earlier. And the previous part of the video kind of explains all that. This is just really the overview. You can see we have some sand packed around the louvers. That has to be done before the inspection's done. Now, in this case, for this septic system we have installed here, we had to put in a curtain drain on the uphill side of the drain field, and that's what you're looking at right now. This is the end of the curtain drain, and it comes across the full length of the drain field, and that basically stops any water from running down the hill along the top of the hard pan and down into his drain field. So what you can see there on that curtain drain is there's a solid plastic that goes down the wall and underneath the piping and stops any water from getting down into the drain field. That's pretty much a quick overview of the whole system. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, leave them down below and I'll get back to you as much as I can. I appreciate you guys watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.